There is a way of looking at the entire 20th century, beginning with Pablo Picasso bringing masks back from Africa and showing them around in French cafes in 1915, beginning with Freud's discovery of the unconscious and Jung's elaboration of those discoveries, and then every phenomenon of major importance that you care to mention in the 20th century: fascism, abstract expressionism, rock and roll, sexual permissiveness, psychedelic drug taking, rave culture, body piercing, jazz. The list is endless. What do all these things have in common? They are reversions to archaic behaviors. They represent rejections of the Edwardian gentleman with his white man's burden, and represent instead a realization that for us to survive and live with ourselves, we have to re-empower archaic values. As the century unfolded, the understanding of what this re-empowering of archaic values might mean has changed. Jung and Freud discovered the unconscious, discovered that we are not all ladies and gentlemen, but that there's a cannibal lurking within. Albert Hoffman's discovery of LSD demonstrated that that inner wilderness is accessible to most people through chemistry. Well, then still later, it was understood that the key ingredient in active shamanism is psychedelic plants, psychedelic experiences. And in a way, that closed the loop between the impulse toward the archaic and the impulses of modern science and modern medicine. The key is the psychedelic experience. That's what makes the shaman a shaman. That's what made the archaic in fact archaic. And so people like Freud and Jung and the surrealists and the Dadaists and the abstract expressionists, all of these people were very close to the mark. The shaman is the paradigmatic figure, and the psychedelic experience seems to be the anticipatory experience of this eschaton that we're headed toward. You know, when psychedelics were first being discussed, it was thought that they would prepare people for death. In a sense, they probably do. But in the same way that they prepare people for death, they prepare people for transformation. It gets you used to the idea that the world is not what it appears to be, and it gets you used to the idea that the world is somehow animate, intelligent, and proceeding along its own agenda. So in a way, shamans have always been anticipations of some future state of mankind. They're the masters of language. They are the ones who are telepathic with the animals. They are the ones who can see into the future. And so I see really a concatenation of tendencies and forces here at the end. It's only going to get weirder. The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly, even beyond the excruciating present levels of contradiction. So I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And at that point, novelty theory can come out of the woods, because eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. So between now and 2012, the next 14 years, I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human immortality, and at the same time, appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, famine, starvation, because the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed. The collapse of the socialist world, the rise of the internet, these are changes so immense, nobody could imagine them ever happening. And now so the good news is that as primates, we're incredibly adaptable to change. Put us in a desert, we survive. Put us in the jungle, we survive. Under Hitler, we survive. Under Nixon, we survive. We can put up with about anything, and it's a good thing because we're going to be tested to the limits. The breakdown of anything, and this is why the right wing is so alarmed, because what they see going on is the breakdown of all tradition, all order, all sanctioned norms of behavior. And they're quite right that it's happening, but they're quite wrong to conclude that it should be resisted or is somehow evil. The mushroom said to me once, it said, "This is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse."
The second point that I think we should try to realize and understand is that the alchemists were not only interested in the regeneration of man, but in the restoration of the philosophic empire as established in the concept of Plato. This restoration of the philosophic empire was to be undertaken by a broad political program. So alchemy penetrated and permeated practically every political and social state of the world, extending as far as China, throughout India, throughout the Near East, and even extending into the Central and South American areas of the Western Hemisphere.
Far beneath the bitter snow lies a seed that with the sun's love in the spring, etc., etc., etc. Music on this broadcast is never frivolously played, folks. You see, for the core to blossom, a series of shocks or initiations are required, such as a bomb going off at a federal building in Oklahoma City, airplanes crashing into tall twin towers in New York City, killing thousands of people, an atomic bomb dropped upon 2 cities in Japan. A complete and total economic collapse. The sophistication of the alchemy meme is such that the experience of gnosis at its core can only be stimulated by these shocks, folks. Now, the shocks that I told you about are major shocks, not just to individuals, but to entire cultures, and sometimes to the entire world. There is no doubt whatsoever that the dropping of the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima changed the entire world forever. So to transmit the idea complex, the gnosis meme through times requires a series of encounters between those in whom the meme is active, those who have merely been exposed to it. From this need evolves the idea of priesthoods. Then, as religious structures degenerated, mystery schools and secret societies. And we can think of these as incubation devices for spiritual memes. Through the millennia, the undigested seed of the alchemy meme was jumbled together with other spiritual memes, creating a seemingly endless series of hybrid spiritual expressions masquerading as alchemy. Pay close attention to that word, masquerading.